The George Zimmerman murder trial is set to resume tomorrow in Sanford, Florida, and that's when the defense will continue its side of the case. It started Friday by calling Zimmerman's mother to the stand. She testified it was her son's voice crying out for help on a 911 recording. And that's what Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, said about her son and her version of the recording as one of the prosecution's final witnesses. I'm joined right now by Judge Alex Ferrer. He is the host of Judge Alex and a former circuit court judge in Florida. So the defense, Judge, began with a big witness. How does the defense kind of keep that momentum up this week?
Well, I think one of the things that we are going to see is we're going to see another medical examiner. This one not quite as scattered as the one the prosecution called. Vincent DeMaio, who's the one who actually wrote the book that the state's expert relied upon for some of his opinions, and is a well-known firearms expert as well as a forensic pathologist, I'm sure will be testifying for the defense this week. I think he's going to give some opinions that are definitely going to help the defense with regard to the distance of the firearm, the trajectory, and things like that. But I think he also would, I expect, testify about why it is that you don't have injuries on Trayvon's knuckles that are consistent with having pounded, as the defense claims, George Zimmerman. And I think what we're going to hear from him is that once you are killed, once your heart stops, the blood is no longer pumping. And as you know, when you get a bruise, you'll hit something and hours later, all of a sudden the bruise will surface because of the blood that's continually pumped to the area. Well, when the heart's not pumping, that does not continue to happen. So I think you're going to hear some testimony like that that answers some questions in favor of the defense that are still lingering out there.
And so what's your interpretation of how the state presented its case? Do you believe that the state presented and has painted a rock-solid picture that George Zimmerman should be found guilty of second-degree murder, or do you think there have been some real holes?
Oh, no, I think there are a lot of holes in second-degree murder. I think they have a shot at manslaughter. Second-degree murder requires a finding of ill will, hatred, and spite that motivated and was the reason for the act that resulted in the death. We don't see that link here. We see some utterings under his breath when he's in the car. They're removed, and they are so interrupted by that fight that we have heard so much about that I don't really think they have much of a chance at a legal case of second-degree murder. Let's face it, a jury can do whatever they want. We saw in the Casey Anthony case, the jury do what a lot of people thought they weren't going to do. So a jury could come back with second-degree murder, and it'd be a question then of whether it survives on appeal. But I think what they have a shot at is manslaughter, because in Florida, an unnecessary killing is manslaughter. If the jury finds that George Zimmerman was not acting in self-defense or exceeded the limit of the defense of the actions he could have taken, in other words, he didn't need to kill Trayvon, or at least it wasn't reasonable for him to believe that he needed to kill Trayvon, then they will reject his self-defense, and in doing that, they will probably find him guilty of manslaughter, which will be almost as bad as second-degree murder for George Zimmerman.
And then as we evaluate interpretation, not necessarily forensic evidence, when you talk about the mothers who testified, the prosecution may have felt like it had a feather in its cap when Sabrina Fulton took to the stand and said it was her son, Trayvon Martin, who was yelling for help, only to be kind of out-strategized, perhaps, by the defense, who called one of its first witnesses as a family member, the mother and the uncle of George Zimmerman, to say, no, that's George who's on the tape. So do you believe that was a strategy that perhaps in the end could be quite brilliant, because it overshadows, the defense's first witness kind of overshadows what was pretty profound witness testimony from the prosecution's last witness on Friday?
Yes, it was good strategy on the defense's part, because it was the last thing the jury heard before they broke for the weekend. So instead of ending for the weekend with Sabrina Fulton's testimony on their mind all weekend long, it was interrupted by the testimony of George Zimmerman's mother and his uncle. And I believe they probably do believe, each side probably believes it's their son. I agree with Omar on that. I think that each mother wants to believe that their son was not responsible for this death, regardless of who really is on that tape. But I doubt that either one of them has actually heard that kind of screaming from their kids.
Sure. All right, Judge Alex, thank you so much. It's going to be yet another potentially riveting week of testimony in the George Zimmerman murder trial. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Frederick.